If you haven't seen my last video, I installed the EJ20, I got it in and mounted, but I ended up getting rained out, so I wasn't able to finish installing it. There really isn't a whole lot that needs to be done. All it comes down to now is installing the accessories. So I need to install the radiator, power steering pump, the AC, intercooler. I need to install the rest of the exhaust, so the turbo, the downpipe. I have a few things in the trunk here, like the intercooler, the blow-off valve, and the radiator. I'm going to be cleaning everything up as I install it into the car just to make sure everything's clean. I also have all new turbo and exhaust gaskets that are going to go on, just like how I replaced all the intake gaskets and the TGV gaskets. If you didn't see my last video, I replaced the valve cover gaskets. Even though this is technically a used engine because it is a JDM engine, it only has around 60,000 miles on it. And in order to do this install correctly, and you want it to last as long as possible and be as reliable as possible, that's one of the things you need to do, is replacing all the gaskets. Basically, you're just future-proofing yourself. But anyways, as you can see, it's basically 100% in. It's just all the little final touches, and then I'll be able to get the fluids in it, and I'll be able to get it started up, which I'm super excited for. It's been raining, so everything is pretty wet. So I'm gonna go ahead and dry the sides, the fenders, and the bumper off, just so I'm not getting soaked while I'm working on the car. And then I still have it on some stands. After I dry it off, I'll drop it down to make it a little easier to work on, and then I'm gonna just get to work and start getting everything installed. The only thing I'm not 100% sure of is all the vacuum and coolant lines. I'm not 100% sure where they all go. I've had the car apart for a little while, so I don't 100% remember. So I'm gonna have to download a few diagrams to get those all sorted out. But otherwise, everything should go pretty fast. I still have everything I pulled off the old engine in an old cardboard box. And I made sure that when I pulled everything apart, I put everything in baggies and labeled it. It just helps to stay organized at the install process as smoothly as possible. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get to work and get this thing going.
Hey, yo. Property. You don't know, this is lion is a burning. It's all about positive energy. So myself, stop stepping. Funky music. Listen.
Keep the funk in their music.
As long as there is music, we still don't wanna fight. As long as there is music, we still don't wanna.
I'm currently working on the turbo. I just got it in, and I did replace the gasket on it. I'll be putting on a new downpipe gasket as well. But besides that, basically it's just finishing the turbo. Need the downpipe, need the coolant reservoir, need to add my intake, the radiator, throw a battery in, and then it's pretty much ready to go. Before I start it up, of course, I'll go ahead and give it a once over. Just make sure that all my lines are connected and that everything's tightened down how it should be. But it's looking like I'm definitely going to be able to get it started by the end of the day. I do want to point out as well, earlier I said that I'm not 100% sure where all the vacuum lines go. Once you start putting things back in, it kind of makes it really obvious where everything actually goes. But let's keep working and get this thing done. Alright, so we're on the home stretch right now. We only have a couple more things to go. I just wanted to show you something real fast because it's really giving me some trouble. If you're doing an engine swap like me and you have the engine out, I'd recommend installing the turbo while it's out of the car, mainly for one reason, and that's because the turbo has two lines coming off the bottom. And the problem is that I installed it and bolted it up to the up pipe before putting that second line on, because the first line is bendable enough to get it onto the metal hose, but the bottom one doesn't have enough flex to it. So I had everything bolted up, and I realized I hadn't hooked that line up. So I tried doing it with everything hooked together, and it just wasn't possible. It's too long and it's not flexible enough. So what I ended up having to do is unbolt the turbo from the up pipe, and then I actually had to unbolt the manifold, the exhaust manifold, and drop the manifold and the up pipe so that I could get enough room to get my hand in there and push the turbo up and to get in there and grab that line and get it on the metal hose. So hindsight, if you can, I would install it before putting the engine in the car. It'll make things way easier. But if you can't do that for whatever reason, just make sure you hook that line up beforehand. It's easier if you don't have if you have the up pipe drop down, because then you have more room for your hand. I also, for whatever reason, the engine that came out of this car was a hybrid, and the brackets I'm using for the intercooler came off that engine, and it's been a while and I don't have any pictures, but this is the same intercooler that came with that engine too. But the brackets, for whatever reason, they just don't line up on either side. But as of now, there's only a few things I still need to do. I did want to add as well, I'm still kind of messing around with filming and camera settings. Talking to the camera is really weird, and I'm still kind of getting used to it, trying to figure out the best way to do it. So I think I'm going to film this next bit a little bit differently and see kind of how it goes. I won't be able to actually see the difference until post-editing, but right now I'm just kind of messing around, seeing what works best for me. If anybody has any suggestions on things that I can do, I'd love to hear it. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started and get this thing finished today, because I really want to drive it and I'm tired of it just sitting around.
Keep the funk in their music.
That's it, guys, we're all done. I just went over everything one time to double check. I do have, this is the old battery that came with the car. I'm pretty sure it's no good. I'm charging it up right now, and we're gonna see if it is actually no good, if I'm gonna have to buy another one. But regardless, we'll be able to get it started because I have this charger jump starter box. Something that was really cool was the car did actually come with this AEM California Smog Legal intake, and it came with an AEM filter as well. But I ended up buying this Spectre filter because the AEM filter was all super crusty and hard and just nasty. So I went ahead and switched that out. This one's much nicer quality. But all I have to do now is I'm gonna go ahead and lower the car, put coolant and oil in it, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over a few times just to get things cycled. And then we're gonna get our first start, guys. I'm super excited, this is awesome. For oil, I'm just gonna be using this 5W30 synthetic blend. I'm just gonna be using this for basically startup, and then I'll let the car warm up, maybe drive it down the road, and then I'm just gonna empty it all out, and I'm gonna switch something a little bit better. But basically, more or less, I just wanna clean everything out and make sure that the engine's gonna be healthy. Quick tip, if you don't have a funnel handy, what I do is I just use old water bottles. You can just cut the bottom of it off, and you just want to make sure that you hold it when you're filling your oil up, but it works really well. So let's go ahead and get this thing filled up, and we'll go ahead and give it its first start. Today is the day, guys, that we start the Subaru. Everything is all ready to go. I went ahead and did a once over one more time just to make sure everything's tightened down and that we don't have any hoses or connections loose. The oil and the coolant are all topped off and ready to go. As you can see, I have the battery over here charging, and hopefully that'll be enough to get it started. Right now I have the spark plugs unplugged so that I can crank the engine over to get the fluids flowing a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the fuel pump fuse as well, so it's not pumping any fuel, and I'll go ahead and I'll crank it a few times like that. Then I'll pop the fuel pump fuse back in and crank it just so it gets the fuel flowing as well, and then we'll go ahead and plug spark plugs back in and give it its first start. Alright guys, crank number 1.
2 hours later.
Alright, so I went out and picked up a new battery real fast. The old battery just wasn't cutting it even with the charger hooked up. So let's go ahead and see if it cranks over. Alright guys, so I have the spark plugs and the fuel pump relay plugged back in. So I'll go ahead and cycle it a couple times to get some fuel through, and then we'll go ahead and give it its first start. Hopefully everything goes okay. Alright, here it goes. Yeah. Yes. Sounds so good. This weather is just not cooperating with me. I'm super excited it started, guys. It opens up a whole bunch of new possibilities to get things done on the car. Unfortunately, of course, my luck, it starts raining again, and the weather has just not been cooperating with me. I shut it off pretty fast because I seen a decent amount of smoke, and it kind of freaked me out for a second. I just wanted to shut it off to make sure. But it definitely looks like there's an exhaust leak on the mid pipe, and then I don't know if it's just some residue, like oil residue or something coming from the front, but it looked like there's some smoke coming out from the front as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some new gaskets for the rest of the exhaust just to make sure, and then once it stops raining I'll go ahead and jack it up, and then I'll start it up, and I'll just kind of go over everything and double check everything and see if replacing the gaskets help or if something else is going on as well. But I'm gonna go ahead and call it there, guys, because this weather is just not cooperating with me and I can't film anymore. So thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Instagram as well. I'll throw my handle up, and I'm just super excited to see what I can do with this car. Alright, I'll see you in the next one, guys.
Hey, yo.